Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today I want to talk to you guys about Aaron Wan-Bissaka, a player which divides opinion amongst United fans, England fans even, fans in general. Is Aaron Wan-Bissaka a good footballer? Is he right for the long-term project at Manchester United? Let's discuss Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Personally, he's a player which I've always liked. I think he's a good player. He's certainly got a skill set which is very, very impressive. Yes, he has a lot of weaknesses, which we will go through today. But, I think early on in the season, it looked like he just wasn't going to have a future at the club. However, he didn't complain. We didn't see him really moaning in the media, no controversy, anything like that. He just kind of knuckled down, got on with it, and now it looks like he could have a future. Second half of the season, he has featured much more, with Dalot kind of in and out of the team. And I think that since the World Cup, Wan-Bissaka has been the better player. So what I want to do is look at his strengths, look at his weaknesses, and basically discuss, is he what Ten Hag needs moving forward? Now, the way that I want to do this is by going through the thirds of the pitch and kind of dividing it in that way. So I want to look at in possession, what he does in the first third, the middle third, and the last third, and then out of possession, the same but in reverse. So what he does in the opposition's third, the middle third, and then United's defensive third. So that's what we're going to do today. So in terms of Aaron Wan-Bissaka, kind of briefly, his profile, we all know what he's really good at. Not necessarily the most athletic player on the ball, but defensively a really good tackler. Probably the best 1-versus-1 defender in the world, in my opinion. But now I want to kind of look at those kind of details through the thirds. So let's start off with Aaron Wan-Bissaka in the first third in possession. When Manchester United are trying to play the ball out from the back, what is Wan-Bissaka good at? What is he not so good at? Because I think this was an area where he would probably receive some criticism. He isn't the most persistent player in the world. However, I actually think it's an area where he is judged a little bit harshly. People look at him and kind of his aesthetic, the way that he dribbles and carries the ball and receives the ball, and therefore say that he's not very good. However, I actually think that he's quite successful in these areas in 1-versus-1 situations. I think he's one of the few United players who can receive the ball in this area, take on his man and beat them. And actually, this is kind of reflected in his FB ref report, where we can see that he ranks very well for his take-ons being attempted per game, but also the amount he is completing per game. Yes, he can be tackled in some of them, but in general, we can see times tackled during take-on, he's in the 84th percentile, so he's ranking well there. I actually think he does have an element of press resistance in this area if he's facing play. When he's in a situation where he's got the ball in his feet, he's facing the play, I think he is very good at kind of drawing this player in here and dropping the shoulder, going past him. I think Wan-Bissaka is good in that area. An area where I would say he perhaps isn't so good is if the ball is being built down the other side. Let's say perhaps Luke Shaw has gone back to Lissandro Martinez, and then United kind of play the ball across to Wan-Bissaka. This is where he can sometimes be caught a bit unaware. So, like I said, when he's facing the play, I think he's very good at that press resistance. His dribbling is quite good. However, with his back to play, or just someone coming on his blind side, he doesn't have great awareness. And this is where he can lose the ball. And this is basically going to be the theme through pretty much every third of the pitch in both attacking and defensive situations. There's a clear strength, his dribbling is good. There's a clear weakness, that his awareness isn't great. So, kind of that first area, Wan-Bissaka is decent. He is somewhat press resistant. He can carry a ball a little bit, but, it's still not perfect. The idea is kind of similar in the middle third as well. Once again, in this area, Wan-Bissaka is actually a very, very good dribbler. Now, yes, again, people really mock him for the way that he dribbles. And don't get me wrong, aesthetically, it isn't the nicest thing to watch. It's not like watching Messi, the way that he glides through players. Wan-Bissaka doesn't do that. However, he is very, very effective and very efficient. It may not look nice, but at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter. If he's getting the job done, if he's beating his man, carrying the ball forward, it doesn't matter too much. And I genuinely think he is one of the better dribbling fullbacks in the Premier League at the moment. People will disagree, but to kind of take the agenda out of it, of what it looks like, and actually watch the effectiveness of how often he takes on his man and how often he beats his man, I actually think he's quite effective at carrying the ball forward for United in this area. And again, the FBref report does somewhat back it up, ranking in the 81st percentile for progressive carries. Now, when he carries the ball forward, it's not like he's carrying it the whole pitch, he's not really driving through. But just kind of that short little burst to beat a man, carry the ball forward, progress the ball up the pitch is very useful. A lot of the play against low blocks, especially in the Premier League, is can you progress the ball forward? Certainly against mid blocks as well. Can you get the ball moving forward through this middle third? Wan-Bissaka can with his dribbling. Now, of course, whilst there's that positive of his dribbling, the negative is his passing. Wan-Bissaka is not a great passer of the football. Not only is he not great at executing a pass, he also doesn't seem confident enough to have the vision to actually look for the more extravagant passes. If we look at Luke Shaw on the other side, Luke Shaw will often either clip a ball over the top of the defence or work himself a bit of space and fire a pass into the feet of the striker or inside to Bruno Fernandes. We don't really see that from Wan-Bissaka. And his passing metrics are all pretty awful, apart from his pass completion for long passes, but he only attempts 2.7 of those per 90. In general, we can see that these passing numbers aren't really good enough. Now, this is one of those areas where we have to ask the question, is that good enough for what Ten Hag wants? We know that Ten Hag wants his side to dominate the ball. Part of dominating the ball is that the opposition will drop deeper. Therefore, you have to be able to move the ball forward with your passing, but also be secure on the ball, not turning the ball over. In terms of pass completion, the 80%, the 69th percentile, it's okay, but it's very, very average. Medium passes, not even worth discussing there, 8th and 4th percentile respectively, but even progressive passes, just 3 per 90, which ranks him in the 22nd percentile. This isn't someone who can get the ball moving forward in that way. So, again, like what we saw in the first third of the pitch, we've got the same in the middle third. He's really good at dribbling. I think his ball carrying is genuinely very, criminally underrated. I think he's actually very good at it. However, the passing isn't there to go with it, and that is a problem. So before we continue with the video, I want to talk to you guys about where I got this shirt from, and you probably guessed it, jerseyfifa.com. They have kindly sponsored today's video and also sent me a load of free shirts for me to check out myself, and I can now really vouch for the quality of these products. They have loads of shirts to offer on the website, so if you are interested, head to the link in the description down below and check out Jersey FIFA for yourself. I think the problems are also there with his passing in the final third as well. He's not a player who can particularly play that subtle pass, in behind the defence or a little reverse ball. He doesn't really have that in his locker. And he also just doesn't create enough chances for his strikers, whether that is with crosses or cutbacks across the box from the byline. Wan-Bissaka isn't someone which really creates chances for those in the middle. That's not his game, but again, at this level, I think you want it to be. In terms of shot creating actions per 90 minutes, just 1.58, which puts him in the 22nd percentile. Well below average. Assists, 0.00 per 90. Not much use. Again, if we compare it to someone like Luke Shaw on the other side, he's very dangerous for United. He gets into a lot of really good positions down the left-hand side, but importantly, his delivery is good as well. Very good final third delivery into the box. He can also play cutbacks again. Wan-Bissaka just doesn't do this. And I think the modern-day fullback, even though we do often see fullbacks playing a bit more inverted these days, I still think that it is important that when they do get in the final third, they do have some end product. They do have the ability to find a pass or cross into the box. If we're talking someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold or Reece James even with his crossing, Cancelo over the past few seasons, fullbacks, there's that expectancy that they're creative. And Wan-Bissaka doesn't do that. However, as we've seen, with the other thirds so far, whilst he may not be good at that, he does have something which he is good at. And I actually have been really impressed with his timing of run this season. Now, Wan-Bissaka, we haven't really spoke about that in the past of being a strength in previous seasons because it hasn't really been asked of him. However, this season, particularly when United are building the ball down the left-hand side, I think he has developed really good timing of when he makes a run forward. Now, it might sound like a little bit small, kind of a small detail. However, the fullbacks, the runs are very important to Ten Hag. And one thing that we've spoken about all season long under Ten Hag is the movement of the fullbacks and how he uses them in big moments. And like I said, I think the big thing which Wan-Bissaka does well is creates room for Antony. So let's say the ball's being built down the left-hand side here and United are looking to switch and basically take advantage of the fact that they've got a front five. What Wan-Bissaka is really good at doing is making this run in here, which just drags his fullback inside, and this then frees up the room for Casemiro or Shaw or Bruno Fernandes to get the ball out to Antony on the other side. It's quite a simple thing, but what it then does is it either gives Antony space to kind of run and carry the ball, or he can go 1-versus-1 against a defender, or he can now play the slip pass to Wan-Bissaka, who can then get into a really good position. Now, yes, again, from here, he does need to be better with his final delivery into the box, picking out a teammate. However, again, I think we can see there's strengths and weaknesses in all of these areas. In terms of if we now look at things from a defensive point of view, we will start in the final third here, where I wouldn't say Wan-Bissaka is particularly a defender which wants to counter-press. If United lose possession in the final third, Wan-Bissaka's instinct isn't to go chase the man and go kind of put a tackle in. Instead, he tends to kind of just trot back into position on the right-hand side. So nothing too noteworthy there, nothing that we really need to point out. He isn't a fullback which presses particularly high. Again, maybe something which Ten Hag might want to look at in the summer, because again, Ten Hag wants his side to press, so maybe that is an issue. However, I think that is more a system thing at the moment rather than a Wan-Bissaka personal problem, so we'll leave it at that, not too much to note. In the middle third, however, I think he is much more effective. And the reason for this is because he can nip in front of players, he can make recovery runs, he can do a little bit of everything. And we know that he's got decent speed as well. So let's say he's in this position here, he does like making the recovery run to make sure that he gets back in and helps his team out. Remember that last minute incident against Crystal Palace where Zaha is on the counter-attack, Wan-Bissaka in the middle third makes the recovery run and puts in a brilliant tackle, which I don't believe any other fullback in Europe's top 5 leagues is able to put in. So again, it's a very specific skill set which Wan-Bissaka has, but his 1-versus-1 defending is certainly one of them. And what he's really, really good at is defending the transition. United are a team at the moment which do kind of give up transitional opportunities. The reason for that is because you've got players like Fred, Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes, who don't necessarily keep the ball for large periods. Their passing percentages are never too great, which means United do overturn possession. Therefore, you need someone who can deal with these situations. We saw his impact when he came on in the Carabao Cup final against Newcastle. St. Max had a really good first half up against Dalot. Wan-Bissaka comes on, basically follows him, and nullifies him, takes him out of the game. Whether that was into these deeper areas, Wan-Bissaka was nipping in and getting interceptions, but also slide tackling in these areas. Wan-Bissaka is a very, very good defender in the middle third. And, I mean, his numbers from a defensive point of view have always been pretty decent, and we can see it there. Tackles in the middle third. Ranking in the 79th percentile is very, very high for someone who plays in a team which kind of typically has a decent amount of possession. Again, if we're looking at someone like Kyle Walker or Reece James, these numbers would be a little bit lower because they're possession side, so they don't have as much defending to do. However, Wan-Bissaka still really gets through his tackles, which probably shows two things. It shows United do need to get better at protecting the ball, but also that Wan-Bissaka is very, very good in these areas. And it isn't just the tackles. His reading of the play is decent as well. You can see that with the interceptions. He does have that ability to kind of jump in front, read the play, win the ball, and then get his team back on the front foot. And then, of course, we're going to talk about what he does in his defensive third. United are kind of camped in. What is Wan-Bissaka good and bad at? Well, in terms of good, the best 1-versus-1 defender in the world for me. I don't think there is a player I would, what's the word for it? There aren't many players in the world that I would back up against Wan-Bissaka in a 1-versus-1. We've seen him lock down players like Raheem Sterling, very good footballer, the likes of Mbappe even, I believe, Neymar. We've seen Wan-Bissaka really do a job on some of the best wingers in the world, some of the best technical dribblers in the world. Wan-Bissaka has this athletic frame, he's very big and strong, but also he's got the reach with the slide tackles, his timing, his technique. It's unmatched in my opinion. I think he's very, very good in these situations. And as a result, it does make him a good defender of his defensive third. Again, if we go back to the Carabao Cup final, up against St. Maximin, who done really well against Dalot, suddenly he was just getting nothing. He was trying to back Wan-Bissaka into these situations and didn't have any joy. In that game, we even saw the left-back coming forward as well to try and make it a 2-versus-1. Wan-Bissaka still dealt with it incredibly well. So I think everyone, even the most cynical of fans, would say that Wan-Bissaka is a very good 1-versus-1 defender in the defensive third. However, again, in this area, there is still a weakness. And it's actually when the ball is on the other side that it's a problem. So, if the players come down Wan-Bissaka's side, I'm usually quite confident. However, the second that a cross is coming in from the other side, let's talk this sort of area here, kind of what we might call a De Bruyne zone. We're going to cross it into this area from the half space. Wan-Bissaka, just not very good at all at defending his far post. I don't know if it's an awareness issue, a technique issue, a hesitance to head to the football. I'm not sure what it is, but he's just really poor, really poor. There's been several goals conceded over the last few seasons where Wan-Bissaka just doesn't deal with the back post well enough. And when you've got also in your box someone like Lisandro Martinez, who isn't the tallest, De Gea, who doesn't want to come claim crosses, it does become more of an issue. And it is an issue. And that's kind of the story with Wan-Bissaka. Again, we concede 1-versus-1 defensively, really good, but then his awareness, not so good. And this is the problem I have with him. I think he's a really good footballer. I think there's a lot he has to offer. And I think he's a player who, you give a set job, I think he can be very, very good. However, long term, is he what Erik ten Hag needs to be at this club and win a lot of trophies? I'm not sure. The way that I see it is kind of how I see the situation with Fred, where I think that he's not a starter, but I think if you kind of keep him for certain situations, certain jobs, you've got yourself a good player. The question is, does he want to be on the bench, you know? The cup final, for example, up against a winger like St. Maximin, you know what he wants to do. Play Wan-Bissaka to nullify them, especially when it's the opposition's main threat. I like the idea of that. But, you know, you're playing a game where you're going to really dominate the ball. I don't think Wan-Bissaka is up to it. So that is the problem. Does he want to be on the bench? If he doesn't, he probably needs to look for a new club. If he's happy to be on the bench, I would be tempted to keep him and bring in a new first choice right back. Now, some people will disagree because a lot of people like Dalot. Dalot is a conversation for another day, probably, because I think he had a really good start to the season, but since the World Cup, been a little bit poor, kind of a little bit inconsistent, unavailable, etc., etc. So we'll talk about that another day. But Wan-Bissaka, at the moment, he's certainly making a good case for himself, because when he plays really well, but I just think still, from a technical point of view, particularly in possession, I'm not sure he is what United need. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you agree with what I've pointed out in terms of his strengths and weaknesses? Again, we can see that for every negative, he does have a positive which kind of balances it out a little bit. But perhaps there's too many negatives to be a top player. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Should he have a future at the club? Again, let me know what you think. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video. And as always, I will see you in the next one.